Welcome to Elevated Outdoors. I'm your host, Quentin. What a beautiful day we had today. Got to about 81 degrees where I'm at. Not too sunny, a little bit overcast, so it wasn't a scorcher, you know what I mean? All winter where I'm at, we find ourselves complaining about how cold it is, and I had to remind my kids this weekend while watching the Memorial Day parade that, it was just a few short months ago that we were complaining about how cold it was. So to be grateful for the warmth that we've been able to receive over the last few weeks. So also, it's only the end of May, so wait until it's August and we get some real heat. But work went well today. I am going to be trained on a new machine in the next few days, which means I'm training a brand new hire actually on my machine. That's going really well. He seems to be picking it up well and fitting in at the shop. So I'm interested to see how that works out. We left off yesterday towards the end of Genesis. We've been on this journey for 8 or 9 days now, maybe a little bit longer. I kind of lost track, but we have just 3 more chapters of Genesis to finish up, and we've learned a lot from the creation of, in the beginning God created heavens and the earth, to the story of the Garden of Eden and Noah and the flood. We heard of the story of Abraham and Joseph getting sold by his brothers, and recently Joseph becoming basically in control of all of Pharaoh's belongings and cattle, and basically being the second in command to Joseph in the land of Egypt where he was sold. And then we had the 7 years of famine after the 7 years of plentiful harvests, and that famine caused Joseph's brothers to have to come from Canaan to get the food and things that Jacob had prepared and saved over the past 7 years when they had the bountiful harvests. With that, once he disclosed to his brothers that it was in fact him, Joseph, Pharaoh had Joseph send for his father back in Canaan and all of his family to move to Egypt and basically live in Egypt where they were more prepared for the famine that was taking place. That leads us to chapter 48, and that was Manasseh and Ephraim. Sometime later, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim along with him. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," Israel rallied his strength and sat up in bed. Remember, Joseph was renamed Israel a few chapters ago. Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and there he blessed me and said to me, I am going to make you fruitful and will increase your numbers. I will make you a community of peoples, and I will give this land as an everlasting possession to you and the descendants after you. Now then, your 2 sons born to you in Egypt before I came to you will be reckoned as mine. Ephraim and Manasseh will be mine, just as Reuben and Simon are mine. Any children born to you after them will be yours. In the territory they they will be reckoned under the names of their brothers. As I was returning from Padan, to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan. While we were still on the way, a little distance from Ephrath, so I buried her there beside the road to Ephrath. Ephrath is also known as, it'd be what is considered Bethlehem. When Israel saw one of Joseph's sons, he asked, "Who are these?" "They're the sons God has given me here," Joseph said to his father. Then Israel said, "Bring them to me so I may bless them." Now Israel's eyes were failing because of old age, and he could hardly see. So Joseph brought his sons close to him, and his father kissed them and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face again, and now God has allowed me to see your children too." Then Joseph removed them from Israel's knees and bowed down with his face to the ground. And Joseph took both of them, Ephraim on his right towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh on his left towards Israel's right hand. They brought them close to him. But Israel reached out his right hand and put it on Ephraim's head. Though he was younger, in crossing his arms, he put his left hand on Manasseh's head, even though Manasseh was the firstborn. Then he blessed Joseph and said, "May the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys. May they be called by my name and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they increase greatly upon earth." When Joseph saw his father placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, he was displeased. Ephraim's head, he was displeased. So he took a hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to him, "No, my father, this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will become great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." He blessed them that day and said, "In your name will Israel pronounce this blessing. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." So he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with you and take you back to the land of your fathers, and to you as one who is over your brothers." I give the ridge of land I took from the Amorites with my sword and bow. So, a lot just happened there. Basically, not Isaac, sorry. Joseph took his 2 boys to Jacob, his dad, or Israel, as he was later named, and they were receiving a blessing from their grandpa. Oftentimes, the oldest child is the one who gets the most blessing, the better of the blessings and the inheritance, more of the inheritance. But in this case, the younger brother, Ephraim, was the one who was given the stronger blessing. So Israel, or Jacob, used his right hand, and the significance of that is, in Scripture, the right hand was traditionally the hand of strength, privilege, honor, and blessing, as it apparently was thought throughout the ancient Middle East, to sit at the right hand was a sign of being honored. In Psalm 110, chapter 110, verse 1, in the New Testament, Jesus described the last judgment in which the sheep are placed on his right and the goats on his left. And so it says that chapter 48, verse 19, it says his younger brother would be greater than he. For four generations, younger brothers received the family blessing. Isaac instead of Ishmael, Jacob instead of Esau, Joseph instead of Reuben, and now Ephraim instead of Manasseh. So Jacob tried to, Jacob favored the younger son of Joseph. It says here that an older brother's presumed rights were sometimes passed over in favor of the younger brother. Consider Seth instead of Cain, Shem instead of Japheth, Isaac instead of Ishmael, and Jacob instead of Esau. The irony of these comes full circle in Jacob's life when he intentionally blesses Joseph's younger child, Ephraim, as he, the younger brother, had been blessed. And it goes on to say that Jacob put the younger brother ahead, and this demonstrated that blessing is not a right, but a gift. God bestows grace at his discretion. He freely bestowed grace is emphasized because most ancient Middle Eastern religions followed a ritual, believing that they could place gods under obligation to act on their behalf, such as manipulation is not true worship. It goes on to Jacob blesses his sons. So they just received a blessing from their father, and now Jacob continues and says, Then Jacob called for his sons and said, Gather around so I can tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel. For you went up into your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it. Simon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let me not join their assembly. For they have killed men in their anger, and hamstrung oxen as they pleased. Cursed be their anger so fierce, and their fury so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel. So, some would think that Jacob curses rather than blesses his sons in this chapter. However, it might be more accurate to say that he scolds Reuben, curses the anger of Simon and Levi rather than his sons themselves, and warns Issachar about the results of long-term laziness. These men and their children could have received these warnings and been blessed by correcting their faults. Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are a lion's cub, O Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion he crouches and lies down, like a lioness who dares to rouse him. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he comes to whom it belongs, and the obedience of the nations is his. He will tether his donkey to a vine, his colt to the choicest branch. He will wash his garments in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes will be darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun will live by the seashore and become haven for ships. His border will extend towards Sidon. Issachar is a raw-boned donkey, laying down between two saddlebags. When he sees how good his resting place, and how pleasant is his land, he will bend his shoulder to the burden and submit to forced labor. Got semis. Jake break. Dan will provide. Jake break. Dan will provide justice for his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a serpent by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels, so that its rider trembles backwards. I look for your deliverance, O Lord. God will be attacked by a band of riders, but he will attack them at their heels. Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring whose branches climb over a wall. With bitterness, archers attack him. They shot at him with hostility, but his bow remained steady. His strong arms stayed limber because of the hand of the mighty God. The mighty one of Jacob. Because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, because of your father's God, who helps you, because of the Almighty, who blesses you with blessings of the heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies below, blessings of the breast and womb. Your father's blessings are greater than the blessings of the ancient mountains, than the bounty of the old age hills. Let All these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey. In the evening he divides the plunder. All of these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and is what their father said to them when he blessed them, giving each the blessing appropriate to him. Now we read about the death of Jacob. Then he gave them these instructions: I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave in the field of Melpech near Meram in Canaan, which Abraham bought as a burial place from Ephron the Hittite, along with the field. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. We read about that earlier in Genesis, remember? And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob had finished giving instructions to his sons, he drew his feet up to the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Chapter 50. Joseph threw himself upon his father and wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph directed the physicians in his service to embalm his father Israel. So the physicians embalmed him, taking a full 40 days, for that was the time required for embalming. And the Egyptians mourned him for 70 days. When the days of mourning had passed, Joseph said to Pharaoh's court, If I have found favor in your eyes, speak to Pharaoh for me. Tell him my father made me swear an oath and said, I am about to die. Bury me in the tomb I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me go up and bury my father, then I will return. Pharaoh said, Go and bury your father, as he made you swear to do. So Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's officials accompanied him, the dignitaries of his court and all the dignitaries of Egypt, besides all the members of Joseph's household and his brothers and those belonging to his father's household. Only their children and their flocks and herds were left in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen also went up with him, and it was a very large company. That sounds to me like the first explanation of what we can identify as a modern day funeral. He was embalmed. This is the first time we're hearing of someone being embalmed. The embalming process with modern technology and medicine and all that takes much shorter time than the 40 days, but all of the family and friends and supporters of Jacob and Joseph, they went in basically what sounds like a funeral procession to Canaan to lay his father to rest. When they reached the threshing floor of Atad near the Jordan, they lamented loudly and bitterly, and there Joseph observed a 7-day period of mourning for his father. When the Canaanites who lived there saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, The Egyptians are holding a solemn ceremony of mourning. That is why the place near Jordan is called Abel Mizraim. So Jacob's sons did as he had commanded them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Marm, which Abraham had bought as a burial place from Ephron the Hittite, along with the field. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, together with his brothers and all the others who had gone with him to bury his father. In chapter 50, verse 15, Joseph reassures his brothers. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph, saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now, please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. I am in the place of God. Oh, am I in the place of God? You intend to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them, and they spoke kindly to them. Then we read of the death of Joseph. Joseph stayed in Egypt along with all of his father's family. He lived 110 years and saw the third generation of Ephraim's children. Also the children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were placed at birth on Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land into the land promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." And Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath and said, "God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place." So Joseph died at the age of 110, and after they embalmed him, he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. So, that's Genesis. In the last few chapters there, it says that Joseph says that God will surely come to your aid. So why would they need the help of Jesus to get out of Egypt? Again, I don't know if you guys can hear that in the background, but the same time as I often do these recordings, train went by. So, but why did he say that surely God will come to your aid? The phrase "come to your aid" translates a Hebrew word that often speaks of God coming to people to bring help or judgment. It emphasizes God's decision or decisive action in human history. Joseph predicted God would lead the Hebrews back to Canaan. They did not have to be slaves for God to work in their lives. The Hebrews were apparently not enslaved until several generations after Joseph's death. In chapter 50, verse 25, he says, "You must carry my bones up from this place." This here says that Moses later carried out the last request of Joseph in Exodus 13:19, which we'll read. We will read into next on the next video. Actually, the next video, we may have Brandon do a video kind of summarizing what we've read over the last 50 chapters of Genesis before we get into Exodus. Something I wasn't aware of, or overlooked, I guess. I don't know that I can't say that I wasn't aware of it. But at the beginning of each chapter, it does give you a little bit of insight to what you're going to read. I should have done this at the beginning of Genesis. I do intend on doing it at the beginning of Exodus and all the books to follow. But I'm going to now read the introduction to Genesis as we finish it up, because that just makes sense, right? The introduction is, why read this book? If you're like most people, we've wondered about the deep questions of life. Why are we here? What is life all about? Genesis takes you back to the beginning of time and finds the answers. It tells about many beginnings, the first plants and animals, the first man and woman, the first sin, the first news of God's salvation. It also shows God's dealings with Noah, Abraham, and others, demonstrating his desire to fellowship with his people. Who wrote this book and when? If you haven't caught on, it's mentioned a couple times, but Moses probably wrote this book around 1440 BC, or before Christ. But since he was not an eyewitness to the creation, he relied on revelation from God and perhaps earlier oral or written records. What period of history does it cover? From the time of creation, a date that can only be speculated, to the time when the Israelites arrived in Egypt and grew into a nation, about 1800 BC. Why was it written? To show that when God made the creation, it was good. But Genesis goes on to say that when sin entered the world, it corrupted creation. The story tells the beginning of God's plan for salvation. Genesis provides the framework upon which the rest of the Bible builds. To whom was it written? Since this book announces that all people on earth will be blessed through Abraham in chapter 12, verse 3, it seems fair to conclude that all people can benefit from the accounts of this patriarch and his descendants. What to look for in Genesis, or what have we already seen in Genesis? Notice the focus Genesis places on the relationships between God and humanity. Broken in the garden and restored through sacrifices and personal encounters with God. Through the stories of history, Genesis illustrates cycles and sins and repentance. So, here it has like a timeline, which is kind of cool if you're into history. It says, when did these things happen? Creation and fall, those are, like they just stated, there's speculation. The flood and the Tower of Babel are also up to speculation, because they're not listed on they're listed as events but not calculated as timelines on the diagram here. Abraham's life would have been from (2166 BC to 1991 BC. Isaac's life was 2066 BC to 1886 BC. Jacob's life was 2006 BC to 1859 BC. Joseph's life was 1915 BC to 1805 BC. And then the book of Genesis wasn't written until 1446 to 1406 BC. So, quite some time passed from when these events happened to when they were read, or written, sorry. But we successfully got through the first book of the Bible, right? That's exciting. I'd like you guys to comment and let me know what your favorite part was, what you gathered, maybe something new that you've learned. And remember to like, share, and comment. And next time we're going to hear a little bit of a review on Genesis, and we're gonna dive into Exodus here in the next couple videos. So I want to remind you guys to get outside, enjoy nature, depending on where you're at in geographically. There's certain times of the year that are rather miserable to be outside. Them days we will figure it out, right? Most importantly is sticking to it and being in the Bible and staying true to ourselves and our commitment that we've made. But enjoy the outdoors when you can, and as always, stay elevated. I'll see you next time.